I want to ask you, obviously, the song from that record is 21 Guns. When you were mixing it, was there already the impression that this was going to be the single, or like, did you not know what was going to be the single from that record?
It's kind of like the answer to Boulevard, I guess. It's sort of like, if you like Boulevard of Broken Dreams, maybe you'll like this kind of a thing a little bit. Not directly, but I mean, it's kind of like the sort of mid-tempo jam. They're pretty certain on that one. I think it was one of the first songs we mixed. So, I mean, honestly, I'm terrible at that. I've only picked one single ever that succeeded, and it was Move Along by All American Rejects. I'm like, oh, this is a big song. And then it actually worked. I'm otherwise awful. I could never be an A&R person.
Hey, no worries, man. Working on a record like 21st Century, working on a song like 21 Guns, when you actually see that it takes off and becomes huge, what is that feeling like for you personally, knowing that you're attached to it?
That's great. It's nice when it's something that's going to have some legs and is sort of timeless. I'm pretty convinced that nobody really knows what's going to work and what doesn't. I mean, I've seen plenty of things that were supposed to be a huge album. Everybody put their, forces behind it, and it just didn't work.
So now the record is done and it's out. Like when you do a record like that, 21st Century, then it comes out and it's released, like, are you no longer attached to the project? How does that work for you exactly? Like, are you still following up with them? Like, what is it like for you?
Kind of keeps coming back because they're like I was saying, like with American Idiot, like they play it out live and there's different versions of it and all this other stuff. So he keeps coming back. Kind of, we were at like 2 songs a day mixing wise at that point. Mm-hmm. And it's cool. You just kind of hear like, oh yeah, this is doing well. But I mean, no one's like checking charts and everything like that.
That's cool. So now going on to the next Green Day record, Uno, Dos, Tres, it's considered 3 separate albums, but would it be fair to say it's kind of all one record and just split up over 3 pieces? Like when you guys were doing those albums, were they all recorded at the same time?
Yeah, it was super long. It took a long time. It was all done at once. Yeah, you're right. It's one big record. I mean, the original plan, I believe, was for them to release one every 6 to 8 months or something like that. They just said, all right, fuck it, and just dumped them all out, because they couldn't tour to support it because Billie Joe was in rehab. So they just, But yeah, that was a long. Yeah, you're right. It's one record.
That's cool.
For sure.
I mean, because it's a lot of songs is the reason why they split it up because there was so much content they wanted to just kind of have it on 3 separate things? Like what was the reasoning there?
If they're trying to sell CDs, which I don't know if maybe they still were at that point. Shit. Maybe, yeah, I think they probably were still trying to sell albums at that point. Don't forget, you can only fit so many songs on an album, on one CD, and trying to sell it as a box set, it's kind of weird. I don't know. It was probably better for them just to bleed it out. I think they had a whole game plan with it, but I don't feel like the 3 records had much of their own personality. It was just really just an extended thing. So I think it was like the band just kind of being given their own space, and they didn't feel like there was any filler on that album, so they got to do what they wanted. There was a little bit of a stylistic shift on those albums. They wanted to have a little bit more of a clashy sound rather than traditional Green Day. If you listen to it, it's not quite as heavy as the older Green Day records. The guitars are a little bit raspier, a little cleaner. That was purposeful. And they wanted it to have a live sound. The way it was recorded was sort of interesting. They had room mics for each guitar set up in such a way that you can hear the band playing as if it were live. Like one guitar is in one direction, one guitar is in the other direction. Billie Joe isn't doubled on his parts. It's Jason White on one side, Billie Joe on the other side. It's actually set up very much like a live show, those records. And so it's just like a big, it definitely has sort of a live feel purposefully. And that was something that they were all about. I remember those files were kind of weird because it seemed like there's a million tracks in them, but a lot of them were just ambience tracks to those guitars, just to try to make it sound that way. And there was a very specific panning situation. It was almost like a stage plot. And that's how that record was done.
So cool. And do you remember what the other record, like the American Idiot and 21st Century, how the mic setup was for those ones?
In a normal, like a standard recording for like a rock album, right? The guitar that you're hearing, like the main guitar, is not one single guitar performance. It's not somebody sitting there playing guitar and everything. It's usually doubled, so there's 2 of them. It's usually the same guy playing the same guitar, or maybe a different guitar, but like this, it's the same dude. It's just a double, and it's just mic'd up real close, so it like clicks in real tight with the vocal and the drums and everything. The other way to go about it would be like how they did Uno Dos Tres, which is it's Billie Joe playing his part on one side, and then Jason White, who's officially, unofficially in the band at this point, playing his part on the other side. So the idea is when you're listening to it, you can actually close your eyes and listen to the band and point out the different people in there. So obviously Mike and Trey are in the middle, and Billie Joe's vocals in the middle, but like the guitar parts are as such to where it's a stage plot, you know, kind of a thing. And then there's also ambient mics in there, and they're panned. They're set up in such a way that I think it was the drum rooms they used. So it's the same pair of mics that they used to record the drums. They left open for the guitars, and they had cabinets set up in the room. And that was so it kind of apes what it would sound like if the band was recording it all at the same time, except they didn't. But it sounds like it did. That was the idea. It was supposed to be like their kind of raw dog.
That's cool. Do you know why they wanted to go in that different sound? Like, what was the motivation there?
They did 2 records that sounded very similar, purposefully. You know, had a lot of success with it. I mean, what are they going to do? Do another one? You know?
Yeah, I hear
like,
you.
Why not? Sure. I mean, and they're probably, I'm. This is conjecture as hell, but I mean, they're considered to be, you know, like the one of the godfathers of pop punk, and just like, all right, let's make one that's a bit more punk. Let's make it more raw. They had that. They did like for Foxborough Hot Tubs.
Even Kerplunk, I mean, one of their earliest ones. That's pretty raw.
Yeah, but that was early. That wasn't aspirational for them. That was just their roots, you know. And then you can't go all the way back to the beginning again. It has to be epic. I believe they did an album where they just like they put a studio in a strip mall or something like that and recorded it really simply. One of the last records they did, they really kind of went for it.
I guess the marquee track from those 3 records would be "Oh Love." Do you remember working on the mix for that one particularly?
I do, actually.
What was it about that particularly stood out to you working on that track?
I mean, it's basically the same cadence as 21 Guns, if you think about it. Same drum beat. No. 21 Guns. It's very similar. It's about I'm trying to remember. You know, All Right Now, the class. I forgot the name of the band. Sure. All Right. Oh yeah. It has like down out. Down out. It's the same thing as Oh Love. Just Oh Love is slower. But again, it's just like I don't know. I just thought it was so. There's something very truthful about that song to me that I thought was really great. It spoke to me. I thought it was pretty awesome. Every time that we had to make a revision or something to that song, I was kind of looking forward to hearing it again.
How many revisions did you have to make for that particular track? And in general, like, is there a lot of revisions when you're mixing?
For Green Day, it's probably around 4, just guessing. For that, I mean, in that time. I mean, like American Idiot, there wasn't a lot. I mean, back then, it was rare that we had a 3rd revision. Like, really rare. Now, it's like usually 4 for every song. You know, that's how it is. We had letters instead of numbers because we didn't think that it was ever going to take that many. Like now it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Before it was like R, D, and F or something like that. I don't even know why we did it that way. It was a weird tradition from back in the days where there hardly was any revisions at all.
Gotcha. So even with Oh Love, there was like 4 or 5 revisions?
Yeah, probably. Just a guess.
That's cool.
I mean, nothing major. It was always, you know, the revisions are usually something pretty small, especially if you're doing a whole album and they want it to sound like an album, especially those albums where they were trying to make it sound live. You know, you don't want to like start fucking with the songs too much and give them too much personality away from each other because then you'll lose that live character. You know what I'm saying? You want to keep it as consistent as possible in a case like that.
Interesting. Did you first hear that song during the mixing or were you aware of it beforehand?
Just the mixing. Like I never heard anything until the day we're working on it. Honest. Well, that's not totally true. The day before we would work on it, because I would be handling the files the day or 2 in advance, maybe 2 days in advance if I had the time, if I was lucky. I mean, I hate to tell you, but it's kind of like in the guise of my job. You know, you don't really have a time to really get into the music of it from a fan standpoint. It really is like about problem solving and being efficient with my time down to the second. Because we're moving so quickly, and it was like a lot was expected of me personally. You know, we were doing a lot in a day, and so it's just like, you know, you get done, you get in the car and you drive away, and maybe like, you know, 2 miles away from the studio, you're just like, oh, I guess that was pretty cool. I like that.
That's funny.
And then later on, you get to hear it when it's done, and everything sounds awesome. The big songs aren't necessarily what stay with me. There's a song that's been stuck in my head that we worked on probably in 2002 or 2003. I don't even know if it ever came out. And it's annoying because I can't find it on Spotify. Dude, there's so much music that gets made that never comes out. Or it never comes out in a way that is commercially
accessible.
Obvious. You know? Yeah, there's so much. And, I mean, like I was telling you before, like nobody knows for certain. I mean, I worked on records where Clive Davis was so sure that this was going to be a huge record and everyone was going to win Grammys and all this shit, and it totally tanked. Program directors coming in and listening to albums, so that they can get ready to play it on, make sure that they're formatted for it, all this crap, and nothing happens. You never know. People give record labels too much credit for what they're capable of. Especially now. I mean, what's a label going to do? Put you on Spotify? You're already on Spotify.
It's true.
There's a lot of people that are turning labels down. I have clients of my own, just independent artists that are only independent because they choose to be. They're turning down labels. There's one artist, she literally, during one of the meetings at the end of it, she's like, so what would you actually do for me that I can't do myself? Mm-hmm. And they were like fumbling for an answer. If you have a good attorney, and you have a good booking agent, and you have a good manager, I mean, that's all you need. I mean, because any of those people could get you on the big Spotify playlist, put you on tours.
I guess the only thing the label would be able to provide is the money, and that's if you're a big artist.
Sure, money, but money for what? To get your record made? I mean, if you're already, the label's only gonna sign you if you're successful already anyway. So, I mean, they can put you in a room with with bigger fish, but you got to pay that money back. It's in advance. They're not giving you anything. You have to recoup it. And that's harder to do with streaming. These days, it's just not all that.
Yeah, things have definitely changed. So for you personally, what is the process like mixing a Green Day album?
The good records in that genre, it's almost like sushi, like really good sushi. There's not much in it, but everything that's in it is excellent, an excellent version of itself. And then, like, let's say you're a sushi chef, and you got the good fish, and you got the good rice. You just want to represent the goodness of it in its best light. It's never like a save from an album standpoint. Everyone knows exactly what it's supposed to sound like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's no mystery as to how it's going to sound when it's done. You just have to make sure you get it there. That's what's so great about those kinds of albums is that, it's so honest. And there's not like, oh, well, this could have been like this or this could have been. It's not like stylized really in any way. I mean, everyone gives Green Day a thing for being pop punk, but it's more punk than pop, at least by modern standards. At the end of the day, those records are really just guitar, bass, and drums, and really good at what they do. Not just performance-wise, but like their approach and how they sound when they play their instruments. It's very like truthfully great. If you listen to the raw tracks, they sound awesome. That's what makes the band the band.
I did an interview with Paul Caldery recently, the guy who did Radiohead's first record. He said that, at the end of Creep, when you hear the piano kind of fade out, he said that was actually a mistake. He said when he was doing the mixing, he put the splice for that in the wrong spot. And they were like, oh, that actually sounds pretty good. When you're mixing a song like 21 Guns, I mean, now that everything is with digital, I'm assuming it's more difficult to make those mistakes.
No, there's not too many mistakes anymore. Like to your point. I mean, that'll happen in the recording process. Some goofy thing will happen, or you'll catch something. But it's funny. Like the reaction is always to delete the mistakes right away because it's easy to do, and somebody has to actually step in to prevent it from happening. Well, actually, that was cool because it'll be gone in a heartbeat. Otherwise, I mean, guys in my position, we're trained to just quickly obliterate mistakes and get to the task at hand, like pretty much on the fly. So,
gotcha.
I'm not saying it never happens. It's just you almost never have to live with anything. Or occasionally there'll be like a laugh or something in one of the tracks, and like, oh yeah, we decided to keep that.
That's cool. So, how did your relationship with Green Day begin?
I spent 15 years working with Chris Lord-Alge, and so I did pretty much everything with him from 2001 until 2016. I think Chris mixed Nimrod for them, but then everything after that, American Idiot, 21st Century Breakdown, and then the triple album they did after that. I worked on all three of those albums with Chris.
You worked on American Idiot too?
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. In which capacity? Because it didn't say that online. That's really cool.
Yeah, the way that it worked is Chris had two guys going back and forth, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Mm-hmm. And then the guy who did most of the work on the album got the credit, essentially.
Gotcha, cool.
So Dimmy did... of the amount of time we spent on it, I think Dim spent 2 weeks on it, and I spent 1 week on it.